Why does a room full of plants feel safer than a room full of people? I don't mean that as a provocation, I mean it as a question. I've watched people carry, quietly, people who would never phrase it that way out loud, but who arrange their monsteras with a care they rarely give their own schedules, who talk to their potos in a tone they reserve for almost nothing else. There's something in that discrepancy I've been thinking about for a while, and I want to follow it carefully, because I think the easy explanations for it are not the real ones. The standard story for the houseplant moment goes something like this. We like green things. Apartments photograph better with foliage. It's a stress relief hobby. End of story. I've come to distrust that framing, not because it's wrong exactly, but because it describes the behavior from outside and skips the interior entirely. And the interior is where the thing that actually matters is happening. Here is what I keep noticing, watching people who collect plants seriously, not casually, but with a kind of attention that gets deliberate over time. The collection rarely stays small. It starts with one plant, usually something forgiving, a pothos or a snake plant on the kitchen shelf. Then two or three. Then the windowsill fills. Then the bathroom. At some point, the original reason, which was probably genuinely just, I like how this looks, has quietly been replaced by something more urgent. The tending becomes a ritual. The yellowing of a single leaf produces a disproportionate amount of distress. And there is a specific turn this progression takes. The point where maintaining the collection stops being about pleasure and starts being about proof. Proof that you can keep something alive. Proof that your attention, directed carefully at something, produces visible results. There's something worth honoring in that, actually. The care is real, the attention is real. The fact that it escalated means something in you needed a place to grow. Here is what the plant gives you that the outside world has gotten genuinely bad at providing. A clear, direct relationship between what you put in and what you get back. You water it, it grows. You give it the right light, it rewards you with a new leaf that unfurls over 3 days while you watch. The feedback is reliable. The cause and effect is clean. And for a person living inside a structure where that reliability has quietly eroded, where working hard doesn't reliably produce stability, where doing the right things doesn't guarantee the outcomes the right things were supposed to produce, this is not a small thing. It is a very large thing, wearing the shape of a hobby. The plant gives back what the broader world has stopped being dependable enough to give. Picture late evening in a city apartment. The kitchen light is on. There's a dish towel over one shoulder. The monstera on the counter has a new leaf coming. You've been tracking it for days. The phone is buzzing. There are 3 things in the notifications, each with a faint urgency. You fill the watering can instead. You pour slowly, evenly. You watch the dark soil darken further. For the duration of that pour, 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, you are not being asked to produce anything for anyone. You are just sustaining something. The plant doesn't know it needs your attention. It just receives it, without negotiation. For a person who has spent the previous 9 hours negotiating everything, their calendar, their responses, what version of themselves is acceptable in each room, that 90 seconds is the only one in the day where the relationship is entirely on their terms. There's something almost funny about that, if you let yourself notice it. Here's the part I want to sit with carefully, and I want to hold this loosely because I'm not certain I found the cleanest way into it yet. There is something in what makes a plant safe that is worth looking at directly, rather than just living inside. A plant cannot leave. That's the obvious part. The less obvious part is what follows. Because the plant cannot leave, because it cannot reject you, cannot stop responding to your care, cannot decide it needs something you're not equipped to provide. You never have to do the harder thing with it. You never have to stay in the room when the feedback isn't clear. You never have to tolerate the period when your effort doesn't produce a visible result and you keep showing up anyway. The plant accepts the care you have. It does not need the care you haven't figured out yet. And so the thing you are practicing in the daily 10 minutes with the watering can is a version of caregiving that will never ask you to grow past where you already are. I've been thinking about this for a while, and the frame I keep returning to is this. A plant is the only living thing in your life you can be responsible for without any risk of being responsible for its feelings. For a person who has quietly decided, not consciously, not as a policy, just by accumulation, that being responsible for another person's feelings is more than they're prepared to manage right now, that is not just comfort, it is infrastructure. The windowsill becomes a place to practice the feeling of caring for something alive, at a safe remove from the version of that practice that can leave marks. There is research, hedged and worth holding carefully, suggesting that proximity to living plants may have measurable effects on the body's stress indicators, and some researchers have pointed toward the particular chemistry of soil itself as part of that effect. I'm not dismissing any of it. The calm is real. The plant is genuinely doing something. I want to name one more thing before the cost because I find it worth pausing on. We take photographs of the collection, we arrange the lighting, we post it. An activity that is supposed to be the offline escape, the grounding, analog thing, gets fed immediately back into the digital loop it was meant to provide a break from. I'm genuinely not sure whether that's inevitable or a choice that could be made differently, but the pattern is worth noticing. The healing gets performed, and the performance is part of the loop. Here is the cost, and it tends to go unspoken in the content that celebrates the collection. The version of caregiving you practice with something that cannot leave trains you for a specific shape of love, a version that responds reliably, a version that signals distress clearly without ambiguity. Human beings do not work this way. Human beings require you to stay in the room when the feedback isn't clear, when the care you're offering isn't landing as intended, when you have to tolerate not knowing why and keep showing up anyway. The plant never asks that of you. And a person who has spent 2 years becoming fluent in the language of leaves may find, quietly, that the other language has gotten harder to remember. There's a specific moment worth naming. Someone asked you recently how you were really doing. Not just fine and how are you, but actually. And you gave an answer that didn't cost you much. Not because you were hiding, because the version that would have cost something felt like too much risk for that particular moment. The plant received the version you kept back, not by decision, but by default, in the daily quiet of the windowsill. That is the silent cost, not a failure, just an accounting. One thing genuinely worth noticing, not as a self-improvement project, just as real information, is what you feel at the next watering. Whether any part of what you're offering the pot is something you haven't offered anywhere that could offer something back. This channel is going to keep following that kind of thread, the things hiding underneath the things we built to feel okay. If that's the kind of honesty you're looking for, you'll know where to find it. What are you practicing when you tend something that will never leave you? The leaf doesn't know it was chosen for its silence, but you did.